Hello. Let me get this set up right quick. Hi, I am Ashley Turner, academic technologist at Swarthmore College. And what that means is I help assist our faculty with learning our different learning technologies that we use on campus, such as Moodle, WordPress, Camtasia, and the like. And so part of that, part of my role is to, there we go. Part of my role is to create faculty development workshops that are often centered around student success. And so for us, student success is important because rightfully so, it has made EDUCAUSE's top 10 IT issues for the past couple of years. So a lot of people think it's important, and we really try to focus on different ways that we could help faculty learn about new tools that could kind of help with this sort of concept, right? So some of the motivating factors that we really kind of focus on student success is that there's a lot of information that's already out there, of course, that you're probably familiar with, that it improves ability to personalize learning, potential for individual progress, and improves student engagement and motivation. If you look at this list again, you kind of can see that a lot of these issues kind of intertwine with each other. So if you are an institution similar to us, you're focusing on different ways that you could create initiatives around some of these issues. But oftentimes you could end up into snowballing into a bunch of different initiatives. People are kind of being stretched thin, and so you may run into what is known as initiative fatigue, right? So we're a small campus. We have about 1,500 students, and we've gone into a situation where we have several different initiatives going on. So for us, we're trying to create programming around a lot of these different things. And we are only a team of 3 in the academic technology department, as well as our faculty. We're not the only ones producing faculty development workshops, right? There's workshops across the campus in different departments, and everyone's trying to grab the attention of the faculty members, and so they're being stretched thin. So there's issues of everyone just doesn't have a lot of time to go to everything. A lot of the same faculty are involved in a lot of these different initiatives, so it's really kind of hard to create a program for all 3 of these. They have 3 different events to attend on any given day. That would just be too much for anyone. So I began to think of different ways that how can we go about talking about these different things, because they're really important, but maybe I have an umbrella that I could put them all under. And so I began to think about how really they're all student focused, and so they really can all fit under the umbrella of blended learning, because a lot of this information is using technology and using tools for outside of the classroom and inside the classroom, right? So I thought that if we just umbrella the term blended learning and we kind of pitch it as an exploration series, that way people won't feel like we're trying to train them and show them how to do something new, because the reality is some of them are probably already doing a lot of this anyway. But I just wanted to create a space where they felt like they were safe to kind of experiment with a bunch of different stuff. I also thought it was important for us as a small liberal arts campus to make sure that we kind of define what blended learning looks like for us on some of our own terms. So I wanted to have this workshop be a place where we could, take one definition, because there are a lot of definitions out there about blended learning. But I wanted us to have one that was broad enough for us and kind of tailored it for what it looks like on our campus, because we don't have online programming and things like that. I also wanted to introduce, new tools to faculty that were kind of curious about a few things. we do a lot of one-on-one sessions with our faculty, and oftentimes we're expressing to them, oh, this tool may be useful for this project or this situation, and sometimes, in reality, they just can't fit everything in. So we're aware of different people that have been curious about, say using an iPad or creating video, but they just don't know how and what that looks like for them. So I wanted to be sure to kind of capture those faculty. And I wanted to bring in other faculty that were a part of those different initiatives. I wanted them to come in and kind of talk about how they're using different things. So I wanted people to meet others from across campus and just have them be able to learn and hear from their peers. So what I decided to do with trying to create this 3-part blended learning series is to pull from some frameworks that were already out there. Just a year or so ago, I was sitting at this same conference, and 2 people presented on how they've approached blended learning at their institution at Penn. So I began to pull from some of their resources. I also attended an online course by EDUCAUSE that talked about blended learning and an active learning framework, which was really helpful for me because I knew I wanted to touch upon our active learning initiatives while we're discussing blended learning. So with kind of pulling from these 2 sources, I didn't want to reinvent the wheel because there's already a lot of information out there regarding these things. So I took information from these 2 sources and kind of tailored it to sophomores so it fit for us, and faculty felt more comfortable with the tools and things that we were using. And so this is what I came up with, a blended learning exploration series where the first part was really the discovery period, where we really talked about the definition of blended learning. And instead of just pulling in tools, just for the sake of using technology, I really wanted them to think about why they were using the technology. So we thought about it, how you could use different tools more intentionally. So we really practiced on kind of doing backwards design, where people we practiced doing learning objectives and things like that. The second part was kind of like the exploration period. We have a teaching with tablets program where we have a small amount of iPad Pros that we loan out to faculty for an academic year, so they can experiment not being tethered to the podium and they can kind of walk around with it. So I wanted to have people kind of explore the possibility of not being tethered to a podium and have our faculty, our iPad faculty, come in and talk about those things. And then the third part was we are now creating more active, flexible learning spaces on campus. There's been a lot of flexible furniture put into some of the rooms just because, and then there are other rooms where it's been more intentional about the different technology and what types of furniture go into the rooms. So we have an active learning initiative, so people can begin to think about more intentionally how to use those spaces. So I kind of wanted to talk about that in the third part. So again, in the first part, we really talked about the definition for this workshop in this room in this space. And luckily, Bryn Mawr, our sister school, has a really great definition that I felt people would feel comfortable with. Bryn Mawr is a part of our TRICO system, and there's a trust factor there. So the definition that they had, I felt like people could really relate to. So for our sake, it was a combination of online, self-paced learning and face-to-face instruction. And so I set that as a standard. So as we went on through the workshop, everyone knew what we were talking about as far as just the ground framing work. And again, we really practiced blended learning in 4 steps. And so over and over again, we discussed how to think about your learning objectives, to kind of think about what it is you want your students to do, of course, and start from there with the end in mind first. And then we talked about what are some of the things that you could use for content delivery as far as tool-wise. Do you want it to be a video? Do you want it to be a discussion? And so we talked about content delivery, the activities that you wanted them to participate in, and then the assessment of how do you assess that they've gotten your learning objective? What sort of tool do you want to use for your assessment? So we kind of talked about different scenarios with these 4 steps, and people, instantly pretty much got it. I mean, people already do this, but I was trying to kind of hit this home with when choosing a technology tool, these are also some of the things that you want to think about. And with doing those things, it could go either way, right? It may lead you to the point where you may say, oh, I actually don't need a technology tool if I want to accomplish this goal. So it's good to just go through these practices. In the second part, I invited our iPad faculty to come and talk about some of the different apps that they've been using. And some of the really popular ones are, of course, Explain Everything, where a lot of people use that to record supplemental videos for people to watch either before class or after class. And a lot of people also use Notability, which is good for annotations during class. So oftentimes people would load up slides or articles or images onto their iPad, and they would have the students break up into groups, and they would pass the iPad around for the students to then annotate either on an image or pick things out from an article or a comic book. So it was really kind of great to see or hear them talk about how it created interaction within their classrooms. Another cool tool that has popped up as of late is called Quizlet, which allows you to create digital flashcards, and it's used primarily for language learning. Students can, have it on their phone, and they could be learning outside of class in an informal sort of way if you set this up for them. And then they can come into class and they have a better understanding of different languages or things you have set up for them to learn. So all those different things, I just wanted them to hear from their peers about exploring the idea of using mobile apps for some, blended learning type of things. And the third part, I really encourage our faculty to take a look at our active learning space. This is one of our newer spaces in Coburg 116, where we have 4 projectors along the walls. They project onto a whiteboard, so you could technically annotate on different images. And then we have the smaller whiteboards that we refer to as huddle boards around the space. You also can use the wireless projection, which we have Apple TV to project with. So I wanted to talk about how to use those different technologies for some of their classes. So we practice with getting on to projecting with Apple TV, which, believe it or not, is not that easy. If you update your Apple device, the day before, how you connect may have changed from last semester when you've used it. So it was really just getting them in the space and having them practice using some of those tools were really helpful. I also had them do an activity with the small huddle boards where I asked them to come in and draw their dream learning space, right? Draw out your dream classroom, what that looks like to you, and they really took to it. I think it just in general, people like to be creative. Oftentimes we don't have enough time or spaces to use our creativity, so it gave them, time to kind of tactilely touch the whiteboards and draw out things. And this is something that they could have their students do. So they really got into it, and after they drew out their pictures, of course, I had them share. So that was just, kind of explaining like, this is totally, can be used with your students as an active learning exercise. It doesn't have to be this grandiose thing, right? You could just kind of introduce this little small interaction, and it doesn't cost for that much effort. But I really wanted them to just kind of get used to using some of the tools that are in the space. We also recently had redid our touch panel in this classroom, so I kind of walked them through the different matrix that they could use to project to different projectors in the room, and so I just wanted them to get more familiar with the space. So some of the feedback that I received was really kind of positive. People left with a better understanding of what blended learning is. in a lot of people's minds, it was this online program. You have to have an online class in order to do this, and it's really not. It doesn't have to look like that for our environment and our space. Of course, we're small liberal arts, so we don't have that programming. But really, it's a lot of it you're already doing. So they felt more comfortable and confident and knowing that they're already kind of doing a lot of these things, and it just kind of gave them a reassurance that they could just keep going with their further exploring different tools and technologies. Also, we talked about all the different tools that are available, including Moodle, which is our learning management system. So it was a really great time where one of the faculty was talking about how he used the rubric feature in Moodle, and there were a lot of faculty there like, oh my God, I didn't know you could do that. So there were a lot of aha moments, and it just sparked inspiration. So I think they really, were feeding off of their peers, which is a really good thing. And they got to meet one another from across campus. So it was a lot of, oh, hi, I've heard of you. I've seen your name in emails, but this is my first time meeting you, so it's great to meet you. So it was a great kind of, intersection of different departments. And I think just overall, they felt more comfortable with exploring new tools on their own after they went through the series. So some of the opportunities I saw that were coming up is that I would love to get more faculty involved, right? The faculty that I approached to see if they would be able to, showcase or demo some of the things that they've done, didn't actually realize that they were doing blended learning. The responses that I got back were, oh, that's great, but I don't actually do blended learning, so I wouldn't be able to help you. But I knew that they were a part of some of these other initiatives, like with the iPads or in active learning spaces and things like that. So maybe I should, kind of come to them with a better understanding, or not talk about blended learning, so to speak, but kind of put it in a framework so they understand like, oh yes, of course, I'd be able to help because that's what I'm already doing. And then also, so I would try to do these things around lunch, because typically people do take lunches, right? Typically. So that's one good spot to try to have a workshop to try to capture the faculty before they have to go teach again. But I realized that 1 hour is often not enough, especially because I wanted it to be a bit more interactive. So a lot of times I would talk about these theories and concepts, and at the end I would have like 2 minutes to try to do some sort of activity, and it just didn't land. So if I were to do this again, I would say I would start with the interaction before we got into the lecturing part. And then the other opportunity I saw that is some of the scenarios that I was giving either didn't apply to the faculty that signed up, or there was, this series was aimed at beginners or people that are, not doing this or interested, but there were some, who were in the medium or the middle, right? So they were already kind of doing this, and they were wanting more information to go deeper. So I would want to maybe survey the faculty beforehand to see, what are they doing already, and then tailor the workshop around to the faculty that are already attending. And so my next steps would be to see if I can replicate this series for our active learning initiative that we are really going to begin to push more as we are gaining a new building on campus. It's going to have almost an 80-seat active learning space, which is really different than anything we have on campus. So it's going to be really important that we help assist people get more familiar with that space. So we're having a summer workshop to kind of go through this, but it's also good to prolong that learning and space it out throughout the semester. So I'm thinking this may help with that initiative in the future. And of course, also to collaborate with more faculty, maybe approach them much more beforehand so they can get a better understanding of what it is I'm trying to do, so I can get more buy-in. And then make it more of a blended learning experience. Maybe have them read some articles or watch a small video beforehand so they kind of know what are some of the things that we're going to be talking about. So it kind of is like a more interaction there. But that's all.